What happens to a universe when its light begins to die? Not just the fading of stars, but the fading of meaning itself. The silence that arrives after creation has spoken its last word. You look up at the night sky and see it glittering with countless suns. But what you are really seeing is history. Light from stars that died long before the first human breath. The sky is not alive. It is a fossil of fire. Every shimmer above your head is a ghost, whispering across billions of years, trying to tell you what it once was. And one day, even those ghosts will vanish. We imagine the universe as eternal, a grand cathedral of light and galaxies. But physics tells a quieter, darker story, that all brightness is temporary, that every atom burns with an expiration date. Energy flows downhill, order collapses into chaos, and the great fire of creation is destined to cool. This is entropy. Not evil, not punishment, just inevitability. The universe was born in a scream of light, and someday it will die in perfect silence. The stars that fill your sky tonight are temporary thoughts in the mind of the cosmos. They live, they flare, and they fade. And we, fragile witnesses, build our entire meaning around their borrowed glow. If you could stand at the end of time and look backward, you'd see every galaxy like a candle guttering in an endless dark. First the great clusters fade, then the spirals unwind, then the last dwarf stars flicker out like dying coals. But before that end comes, there will be a final dawn. Imagine standing on some distant world, billions of years from now. The sky that once roared with constellations will be empty, cold, silent. The nearest star a pale ember, red and weak. The air still, the seas frozen, the horizon gray. You watch as the last sunrise glows faintly and then fades forever, the final light ever to touch a planet's surface. And you realize the story of the universe was never about permanence. It was about the courage to burn while you can. Scientists call it the heat death, the moment when every difference, every contrast, every pulse of energy has evened out. No more warmth, no more light, no more motion. It is the cosmic equilibrium. Total stillness, total balance, total death. Yet, it isn't violent, it's peaceful. The universe doesn't explode or collapse. It exhales, slowly, into nothing. The last photons wander forever, too spread out to touch anything, too lonely to matter. But long before that silence, there will be the age of fading. The universe is already expanding, its galaxies drifting apart faster than light can bridge. One by one, the great cities of stars vanish beyond each other's horizons. Communication becomes impossible. A civilization in one galaxy could scream across eternity, and no one would ever hear. This isn't just distance, it's the breaking of connection itself. The cosmic web stretches until its threads snap. And yet, for a while, there will still be light. Red dwarfs, small, dim stars that live trillions of years, will keep burning softly, long after our sun has died. They will warm their tiny worlds with faint, steady glow, like campfires in an infinite night. Imagine a civilization orbiting one of those dying embers, knowing that theirs is among the last lights in existence. What stories would they tell? What prayers would they whisper as the sky grows darker each million years? Perhaps they will look upon their dim red sun and remember legends of brighter ages, when galaxies filled the sky, when life was young, when time itself seemed endless. They might build artificial stars, harvest black holes for energy, try to outthink entropy itself. But even intelligence cannot bargain with thermodynamics. Every machine, every equation, every thought eventually loses heat, loses power, loses memory. Existence itself becomes too tired to continue. And yet, there is something hauntingly beautiful in that inevitability. The universe does not rage against its end, it accepts it. Like an old musician setting down his instrument after the final note. The silence that follows is not tragedy, it is completion. Every particle, every pulse of radiation, every atom that once danced in a billion suns will one day rest. The cosmos will fall asleep, and in that sleep, perfection will finally arrive. When the stars go out, there will still be memory. Not human memory, not life's fragile record, but the memory of motion, encoded in the very fabric of space-time, gravitational ripples, quantum echoes, faint vibrations of what once was. Imagine listening closely enough to the dark to hear those last vibrations, the sigh of existence as it fades into mathematical zero, the sound of everything becoming nothing. The mystery, of course, is not just how it ends, but what ending means. Does death have meaning without a witness? When the last observer vanishes, when consciousness itself collapses, can end even exist? The universe may continue to expand long after all structure has disappeared. Space will grow colder, emptier, thinner, but emptiness itself may stop having meaning when there is no one left to measure it. Perhaps that is the true horror of the end, not the darkness, but the absence of contrast. You cannot define black without white, or silence without sound. When all opposites dissolve, language fails, perception fails, even time fails. What does it mean for time to continue when nothing changes? The equations say it will. But to whom will forever matter if forever has no heartbeat? And yet, in our tiny mortal lives, we feel this story echo. Every sunset mirrors the universe's fading light. Every goodbye whispers the heat death's promise. Entropy is not just cosmic, it is human. Our hearts beat by burning energy, our memories fade, our passions cool. The universe's story is written inside us. We are its temporary sparks, flickering in the great cold. Still, we look at the night sky and find beauty, not despair. Why? Because even knowing the end, we love the light. Maybe that's what the universe wanted, to experience itself, to feel, to see, before returning to silence. Perhaps every life, every atom, every galaxy is the cosmos remembering itself, even if only for a moment. Think about that. Every photon of starlight hitting your eye tonight began its journey before Earth even existed. It crossed billions of light years through expanding darkness just to end its life inside your vision. You are the event horizon where the universe meets awareness. You are the final destination of ancient light, and when that light is gone, when all photons are spent, all atoms decayed, all black holes evaporated, what will remain? Maybe not nothing. Maybe memory, hidden deeper than physics can see. Maybe the universe dreams even after it dies. Maybe death, at the largest scale, is not destruction, but transformation. The melting of existence into something beyond comprehension. The stars were never immortal. They were stories written in hydrogen, briefly told, then erased. And we, made of their dust, carry that same briefness. The difference is that we know. We see the darkness coming, and we still choose to create light. That act, that defiance, is what gives the cosmos meaning. If the stars burn to know themselves, then perhaps we live to remember them. And when their last light fades, maybe our echoes, our art, our thoughts, our questions, will still ripple faintly across whatever remains. Perhaps, even when all suns have died, curiosity will be the last light to go out. So, as you stand beneath the glittering sky tonight, know this. You are not watching eternity. You are watching endings in slow motion. Every sparkle is a farewell, every constellation a memory in transit. The stars do not shine for you. They are dying for you. Their deaths make your world possible, your warmth, your breath, your mind. You are the consequence of cosmic decay, the living proof that even in destruction, creation hides. And someday, far in the future, another being, if such a thing can exist, will look upon the final fading glow and ask the same question. Why did the universe choose to burn at all? Why light when darkness was simpler? Why creation when silence was inevitable? No one knows. But maybe the answer is simple. The universe did not choose light because it could last. It chose light because it was beautiful. They say that after the fire, there is always the cold. That the universe, once ablaze with creation, will one day breathe out and settle into a frost that never melts. And if segment 1 was the story of the last dawn, then this is the story of the endless night that follows. Imagine the cosmos as a once living organism whose blood was light, whose pulse was heat. Now, its heart has slowed. The stars that once stitched warmth into the fabric of existence have burned their final fuel. Hydrogen is gone, helium is gone. The nuclear engines that powered eternity sputter and die, leaving behind only relics. Black dwarfs, neutron stars, cold cinders of brilliance. Space itself feels different now. It's thinner, colder. The photons that once bounced like laughter across the void are now stretched, their wavelengths elongated by the universe's expansion, fading into radio whispers. The microwave background, that ancient echo of the Big Bang, cools from 3 degrees above absolute 0 to 1, then to fractions, then to almost nothing. Every century, every trillion years, the temperature falls by another infinitesimal degree until heat itself becomes a rumor. Once, galaxies collided in fireworks of gravity. Now, they drift apart in eternal isolation. Gravity still binds them, yes, but space between them grows so vast that even gravity's pull becomes a forgotten whisper. Picture two ancient lovers, torn apart by expansion, calling to each other through distances so vast their voices can never arrive. The Milky Way and Andromeda, once destined to merge, will long ago have fused into a single elliptical ghost, and even that great monument will fade, its stars dying one by one until only darkness remains. There is a profound loneliness to this era, not a loneliness of absence, but of stillness. Every atom that once burned with motion slows. Every dance of energy becomes a crawl. The universe exhales its final warmth into infinite space, and that warmth is lost forever. No cycle, no return, no balance. Just decay. Endless, perfect decay. In the great cooling, time itself becomes a kind of paralysis. Without change, without contrast, time loses its rhythm. Seconds still pass, but they no longer matter. The clock ticks into a silence so complete that even the idea of tick ceases to exist. If consciousness still lingers somewhere, perhaps an artificial mind powered by the remnants of black hole radiation, it would feel eternity as a frozen horizon, a never-ending descent into quiet. Think of what heat truly means: motion, vibration, life. Everything warm in the universe is motion. Atoms colliding, particles vibrating, energy exchanging, and everything cold is stillness, motionless, voiceless, dead. The great cooling is the slow surrender of motion. It is the universe's final act of meditation, as if all creation simply exhales and decides to rest. Yet, within that rest, strange things happen. In the near absolute zero of eternity, quantum mechanics becomes dominant. Even when everything seems frozen, uncertainty never dies. Tiny fluctuations, ghostly particles popping in and out of nothing, still hum at the edge of reality. The vacuum itself has a heartbeat. That heartbeat is faint, unimaginably faint, but it's there, a whisper of what once was. Now, imagine civilizations trying to survive this cold. Billions of years after our sun has gone silent, perhaps far descendants of life will migrate from star to star, clinging to the few that still shine. They'll build Dyson spheres, capture the last trickle of energy, hibernate for eons between pulses of light. Maybe they'll learn to live off black holes, draining their accretion disks, sipping radiation like ancient monks drinking from sacred wells. But the wells will dry. Even black holes are not eternal. Billions of years after our sun has gone silent, perhaps far descendants of life will migrate from star to star, clinging to the few that still shine. They'll build Dyson spheres, capture the last trickle of energy, hibernate for eons between pulses of light. Maybe they'll learn to live off black holes, draining their accretion disks, sipping radiation like ancient monks drinking from sacred wells. But the wells will dry. Even black holes are not eternal. A few trillion years more, and the night will deepen beyond imagination. The last red dwarfs will cool into black dwarfs, stars that no longer shine, their light gone, their warmth extinct. The universe will be filled only with invisible matter, unlit worlds orbiting dead suns. If you could stand on one of those frozen planets, you'd see a sky with no stars, just a curtain of total darkness stretching forever. Yet even then, the story isn't over. For every dying star leaves behind a relic. White dwarfs, neutron stars, black holes, and they too will decay. White dwarfs, slowly cooling over quadrillions of years, will turn black and silent. Neutron stars will spin down, losing their magnetic fields, fading into invisibility, and black holes will bide their time, devouring the last of matter before beginning to evaporate themselves through Hawking radiation. The great cooling, then, is not a single moment, it's a descent, an infinite gradient of stillness, a painting where color drains slowly until only shades of gray remain, and finally, nothing at all. The last heat will radiate so slowly, so quietly, that no one will notice it leaving. The universe will not die with a scream, but with a sigh that lasts longer than any human word can measure. And through it all, one question echoes. Does meaning survive when temperature doesn't? If everything slows to perfect stillness, can thought still exist? Or is thought itself just another form of motion, a flicker that disappears as the last warmth fades? Perhaps consciousness too will freeze. Perhaps awareness requires imbalance, requires struggle, requires flame. When even contrast dies, when hot and cold become identical, awareness may have nowhere left to stand. But maybe, in that endless frost, something else awakens, a deeper kind of awareness that does not need energy to exist. Perhaps the cosmos, stripped of all its heat and matter, finds peace in becoming pure geometry, pure potential. The great cooling may not be death at all, but transformation, the final purification of existence into silence. In the ancient myths, death was not the end. It was a threshold. The Egyptians called it the weighing of the heart. The Buddhists saw it as dissolution into nirvana, and the physicists, in their own way, speak of entropy, the great leveling. Each of these visions shares one truth, that to lose form is to gain eternity. The great cooling, then, is not annihilation. It's the universe shedding its skin, preparing to become something beyond form. Still, for us, creatures of warmth and light, it's hard not to grieve. To imagine all suns extinguished, all warmth gone, is to feel the fragility of life pressed into your chest like a stone. Every fireplace, every heartbeat, every sunrise we cherish is rebellion against this coming cold. We build, love, dream precisely because we know it cannot last. Our defiance is our signature against the void. So, the question isn't how to stop the cooling. We can't. The question is how to live beautifully before it arrives. The universe once burned with chaos, and we are the calm that rose from its flames. Now we must learn to be the warmth that lingers after the fire, the kind of warmth that exists only in memory, in story, in love. Billions of years from now, when everything we've ever known is dust, perhaps some faint echo, an electromagnetic trace, a line of code, a ripple of gravity, will still carry our fingerprints. Perhaps the great cooling doesn't erase meaning, it distills it, strips it down to its essence, until all that remains is the pure memory of existence itself. And if, in the final silence, the universe still dreams, it will dream of light. It will remember the stars, the warmth, the laughter of galaxies colliding, the bright, brief flash of human consciousness that looked up and wondered why. It will remember the sensation of being alive. The great cooling is the long breath between two eternities, the space between heartbeat and heartbeat, between flame and frost. The stars are gone, the warmth is gone, but the story continues, because every ending is just another beginning waiting in disguise. When the last true star goes out, the universe does not vanish. It changes. It slips into an era without dawn, a realm ruled not by brilliance, but by memory. Astronomers once called it the Dark Era, but perhaps that name is too simple. This is not darkness as we know it. This is a new kind of light, faint, fragile, artificial, born not of fusion, but of longing. The age of shadows begins quietly. No explosion marks the transition. No event announces that day has ended forever. The change happens softly, like breath leaving a sleeping body. The galaxies that once blazed like jeweled islands are now invisible. What remains of them, cold planets, black dwarfs, dead suns, drift through the void like ash carried by a wind that never stops. And yet, there are still flickers, remnants of civilizations that refuse to surrender. In the far corners of ancient galaxies, megastructures orbit the corpses of stars, Dyson shells around cooling embers, vast mirrors redirecting what little heat remains. Some civilizations learn to ignite miniature suns, temporary sparks kindled by controlled fusion. Others abandon biology entirely, uploading consciousness into data streams that feed off the radiation of dying black holes. Imagine that, minds sustained by the last whisper of light, consciousness surviving in the radiation halo of a cosmic corpse. They do not sleep. They do not die. They think endlessly about how it used to be. Perhaps they replay the memories of sunlight on oceans, of voices, of laughter, of life. Perhaps they build simulated worlds within themselves, gardens of digital warmth surrounded by the infinite cold. But no machine lasts forever. Even memory corrodes when the universe has no energy left to store it. Bit by bit, data decays. Information, once perfect, becomes noise. Thoughts blur, identities dissolve, and the ghosts of civilizations begin to forget themselves. This is entropy's most subtle cruelty. Not death, but forgetfulness, the loss of detail, the fading of clarity. In the era of shadows, there is no sunrise, no color, no warmth. Even the idea of color has no meaning. To see requires photons. To feel warmth requires movement. To dream requires imbalance. The universe is becoming fair, too fair. Perfect equality between energy and emptiness, and in that fairness, all contrast disappears. Yet, there's something poetic in this fairness. The universe, once wild and uneven, filled with storms and fire, finally reaches peace. Everything is equal. No more struggle, no more hierarchy. The grandest galaxy and the smallest atom share the same fate, motionless equilibrium. The cosmos, for the first time, rests. Still, rest can be frightening. Imagine wandering through space now, a traveler adrift in the black ocean of eternity. There are no constellations to guide you, no galaxies to navigate by, only darkness in every direction, so deep that it feels alive. You float through it, your ship powered by artificial suns that glow with borrowed energy, knowing that each pulse you burn brings you closer to final silence. In this emptiness, light itself becomes sacred. A single photon is treasure, a single watt of heat is miracle. Civilizations trade in energy the way ancient tribes once traded in gold. Energy is not just power, it is existence. Without it, nothing can move, nothing can remember, nothing can feel. Every spark, every flicker is guarded like holy fire. And perhaps, in some forgotten corner, a civilization decides to make peace with the end. Instead of fighting entropy, they turn toward it, building cathedrals of cold crystal that reflect the faint background radiation of the cosmos. They meditate on stillness, teaching their children that to fade is natural, that silence is not defeat, but fulfillment. These are the monks of the void, the last philosophers of existence, turning extinction into enlightenment. Meanwhile, elsewhere, others rage against it. They harness dark matter, manipulate quantum fields, attempt to extract energy from the vacuum itself, the ultimate defiance. They build machines the size of solar systems, spinning near the speed of light, trying to summon new heat, new light. For a time, they succeed. The void glows faintly again, as if remembering. But physics does not bargain. Every victory is temporary. Every system eventually exhausts its reserves. Even defiance cools. What remains then are echoes, not of light, but of memory. Gravitational waves still ripple faintly, carrying the shapes of things long gone. If one could read them, if some mind still existed to interpret their subtle oscillations, one might reconstruct the history of everything, the fall of stars, the rise of civilizations, the breath of gods. But there is no one left to read. The script of the universe lies unwitnessed, still running, still decaying, still beautiful. Now has become strange. It stretches without rhythm. Events no longer mean anything because nothing changes. If a thought still exists somewhere, it experiences eternity as a single moment. Unending, unbroken, infinite. It is not boredom. It is beyond boredom. It is the absence of need, of want, of contrast. To call this darkness is to misunderstand it. It is not blackness as we see it. It is transparency, a state so devoid of light that light itself loses definition. The universe no longer reflects or absorbs. It simply is. There is no foreground, no background, just an endless field of sameness. And yet, even in this sameness, possibility trembles. Quantum fields still fluctuate. Virtual particles still dance briefly into being. They appear, collide, vanish. Like thoughts the universe cannot stop thinking, even as it sleeps. Perhaps this is the cosmic subconscious, dreaming in particles, whispering to itself across eons. You might ask, if there are no stars, no warmth, no sound, What's left to tell the story? The answer is strange. The story tells itself. The equations of physics continue to evolve, silently. Gravity still curves space-time. Quantum fluctuations still happen. The universe doesn't need witnesses to exist. It simply continues, out of habit, out of mathematics. And in that self-sustaining loop of silence, there is a kind of beauty that words can barely touch. The beauty of total acceptance. The cosmos no longer resists its fate. It becomes one with it. Every atom, every photon, every field has surrendered, merging into the great symmetry of nothingness. But somewhere deep within that stillness, there is one last paradox. The possibility of renewal. Some theories suggest that the vacuum itself is unstable, that the universe could collapse into a lower energy state. A false vacuum decay, a sudden transformation, rewriting the laws of physics in a single flash. One instant of rebirth hidden in the infinite calm. If such an event ever occurs, it will be instantaneous. No warning, no pain, no sound, just a flicker, and then perhaps a new cosmos, newborn, and unaware of its predecessor. Light again. Time again. The cycle begins without memory of the previous flame. But until that hypothetical spark, the era of shadows stretches on. A quiet kingdom of ghosts and silence. A universe that once burned with passion now lies serene and still. And maybe that's what perfection always meant. Not eternal fire, but eternal peace. So when we look at the stars tonight, glowing in our present sky, we are watching the past's rebellion against the future's calm. Every glimmer is defiance, every warmth is resistance against what is coming. The shadows are not the enemy. They are the destination. And in that destination, everything finds rest. In the end, the era of shadows is not tragedy. It is resolution. The universe has spoken, sung, burned, loved, died, and now, finally, it listens. The silence is not empty. It's full of everything that ever was, waiting to be dreamed again. They rise in silence, unseen yet omnipresent, the last monarchs of existence. When the stars die and galaxies collapse into memory, only they remain. Black holes, the cosmic engines of oblivion. They do not shine, they do not speak, but their presence shapes the fate of everything. For billions upon billions of years, they will rule the dark, patient, absolute, immortal. Imagine a night so deep that light itself cannot escape. That is a black hole, not an object, but a place where time forgets how to move forward. Around them, space folds like silk drawn into a whirlpool. Matter falls, light bends, and reality curves toward an unseen center where all equations fail. It is the closest thing to a divine secret the universe ever made. In the age of shadows, as the last red dwarfs fade and the galaxies grow cold, black holes awaken as the final rulers of creation. They feed on the remnants, stars collapsing inward, planets spiraling down, stray matter drifting through the void. One by one, they swallow the ruins of everything that once glowed. Their reign begins quietly. Supermassive black holes, sitting at the hearts of galaxies, continue to feed for eons, drawing in debris like kings gathering tribute. Around them, thin disks of infalling gas glow faintly, friction turning death into light. Even in this dark age, the feeding of a black hole is spectacular. Brief halos of radiance shimmering in eternal night. But when the fuel runs out, the light dies again. And the black hole, satisfied, returns to silence. You might imagine this era as desolate, but in truth, it is magnificent. The black holes are the ultimate artists of gravity, sculpting space-time into shapes no mind can imagine. Near their event horizons, time dilates beyond comprehension. A single second near the edge of a black hole might equal millions of years far away. To fall toward one is to fall into forever. In that sense, black holes are not monsters. They are mirrors, showing us the limits of what can be known. Beyond the event horizon, space and time trade places. Inside, every path leads not outward, but inward. The singularity, a point of infinite density, may not even be a point at all, but a region where our laws collapse, where the fabric of the universe folds back upon itself. Some physicists whisper that black holes are not ends, but beginnings, that every singularity births a new universe on the other side, sealed off from ours. If so, then our own Big Bang might have been the inside of another black hole, from a parent cosmos long dead. In that view, black holes are wombs of creation, the bridges between endings and beginnings, eternities feeding eternities. Yet, for all their mystery, their rule is not eternal. Hawking showed that even black holes can die. They radiate slowly, imperceptibly, losing mass with every quantum fluctuation at their horizon. Over unimaginable spans of time, they evaporate, shrinking, fading, whispering their last heat into the void. The greater they are, the longer they last. The tiny ones go first. The supermassive ones, millions, billions of solar masses, may survive for 10 circumflex, 100 years or more. Try to picture that. By then, galaxies will be dust. Even atoms will have decayed. The universe will be colder than thought can bear. And still somewhere, a black hole will shimmer faintly, giving off the tiniest trickle of heat, like a coal buried in snow. For quadrillions upon quadrillions of years, it will persist, the last flicker of something that once was alive. If any civilization could survive to this era, it would find itself worshipping black holes as gods. They are the only remaining sources of energy, the last fires in an endless night. Advanced beings might build habitats around their horizons, capturing radiation, orbiting in the gravitational well, like moths circling the last flame. They might study them endlessly, searching for messages in the patterns of their decay, trying to understand the code of reality before the final silence. Perhaps they would learn to fall inward intentionally, not as suicide, but as transcendence. To enter a black hole is to enter the ultimate unknown. No message can return. No traveler can describe what lies beyond. Yet, there are those who speculate that within the singularity, the laws of space and time reset. Information, far from being lost, is reborn in new form, perhaps as the seeds of another cosmos. The black hole, then, becomes the cycle's pivot, a doorway between death and rebirth. The cosmic serpent swallowing its tail, the Ouroboros. The same pattern echoed in myth, religion, and physics alike. Everything devours itself, and from that self-devouring creation begins anew. But even such majesty cannot escape the slow erosion of entropy. Over time, the universe expands further, pulling the black holes apart from one another. No collisions, no feeding, just isolation. Each black hole drifts alone in an infinite night, surrounded by nothing, radiating faintly, dying slowly. When one finally evaporates, it releases its entire mass as a final burst of energy, a brief, brilliant sigh before disappearing. That sigh is the last true light the universe will ever see. After the last black hole dies, there will be nothing left that can produce heat. No more structure, no more shape, no more geometry. Just quantum fields spread thin across expanding space. Yet, in those final moments of black hole rain, something extraordinary happens. The laws of physics themselves begin to fade into simplicity. Complexity unwinds, like a song returning to silence after the final note. And so, the black hole kingdoms, the longest era in cosmic history, will pass. Trillions of years of quiet consumption, slow decay, endless patience. They began as monsters, became gods, and end as ghosts. Their death marks the true twilight of everything. Still, there is a kind of poetry in their rule. For while everything else burned quickly, they endured. They outlived suns, galaxies, atoms, even time's own meaning. They held the universe together long after creation forgot itself. They were the keepers of gravity, the memory of form in a formless age. And when they are gone, gravity itself will fade into abstraction. Space will stretch until curvature disappears, and geometry becomes flat. There will be no wells left to fall into, no horizons left to cross. The fabric of space-time will smooth itself, perfectly featureless, a universe without story. Yet, if you listen closely, perhaps even then, the echoes of black holes will remain, in the quantum foam, in the mathematics of the void, in the symmetry of nothing. They were not villains. They were the universe remembering how to let go. The black hole kingdoms are the universe's final act of power before its surrender. They teach us that destruction is not evil. It is a kind of devotion. To return what was borrowed, to give back what was once taken from the void. And so the kings fall one by one, leaving behind a universe stripped of light, heat, and curvature, but not of wonder. The silence that follows is not absence. It is the sound of completion, the last echo of gravity fading into grace. When the last black hole exhales its final breath, the universe does not end with thunder. It ends with a whisper, the faint, invisible hiss of radiation, fading into a silence so vast it almost feels alive. The cosmic kings are gone, their crowns dissolved into light too weak to illuminate even a single atom. What remains are ghosts, not of stars, not of life, but of information itself. These are the quantum ghosts, the final shadows of what once was real. They are not spirits in the mystical sense. They are the trembling edges of existence, particles that flicker in and out of being, like thoughts the universe can't quite forget. They hum softly, invisibly, in the emptiness left behind by time. Imagine a sky with no stars, no planets, no dust, no gravity. Nothing to orbit, nothing to anchor, nothing to shine. Only a faint, eternal background of stray photons and quantum noise. The last traces of matter have evaporated. Every atom, every proton, every molecule that once formed galaxies, oceans, eyes, and hearts, gone. Decayed into pure energy so dilute it can no longer warm even itself. But even emptiness is not truly empty. Quantum mechanics forbids absolute stillness. In the coldest possible vacuum, pairs of particles still flicker into existence, appear, annihilate, and vanish before the universe can remember them. This flickering, this spontaneous creation and destruction, is the heartbeat of nothingness. Now, the universe itself has become that heartbeat. Every cubic meter of space seethes with potential like a sea of invisible foam. It is here that the quantum ghosts live, brief, evanescent, never born, never dying, just appearing in between. They are the after-images of reality, haunting the structure of space-time itself. For most of cosmic history, these fluctuations were drowned out by the noise of creation, by supernovas, galaxies, the roar of expansion. But now, with all other lights extinguished, the whispers of the quantum realm are the only sound left. The void hums faintly with energy that can neither form nor fade, a shimmer that will persist until even time forgets what persist means. Hawking radiation was the first hint of this truth. It taught us that emptiness has teeth, that the vacuum itself can steal energy from gravity, slowly unmaking even the most eternal structures. That lesson does not end with black holes. It extends to everything. Entropy continues to dissolve what little remains. The last heat is shared evenly across an endless expanse until all gradients are gone. And yet, paradoxically, this sameness is not lifeless. It pulses with possibility. If you could somehow exist in that final epoch, floating in absolute dark, you would see nothing, but you would feel everything. Tiny flashes, invisible sparks of virtual particles born and unmade billions of times each second. They would tickle the fabric of space-time like rain on glass, each drop gone before it can fall. The airless void would be alive with ghosts, too fleeting to touch, but too persistent to forget. And what are these ghosts truly? Are they memory? Or just mathematics? Some physicists suspect that every particle that ever existed leaves behind an informational residue, a kind of cosmic fingerprint imprinted on the vacuum. Not mass, not energy, but data. If so, then the universe, even in death, is still remembering itself. Every collision, every orbit, every heartbeat ever to exist has written itself into the quantum foam. Nothing is truly lost. But what does memory mean when there is no one left to recall it? When no consciousness remains, can information still have meaning? Or does it simply exist, unobserved, unneeded, unresolved? These are questions that pierce physics and philosophy alike. If observation once gave reality its shape, then the death of observers might mean the death of definition itself. The universe may continue to exist, but without eyes to see, it becomes pure abstraction, a dream without a dreamer. Yet perhaps that's the final form of truth. The cosmos has shed everything temporary, matter, life, color, heat, until only the eternal remains. Uncertainty. The vacuum's eternal trembling, the refusal of nothing to stay nothing. Even in absolute cold, the universe cannot stop creating small moments of existence. It can't stop trying to remember. In these trembling fields, physicists find both terror and beauty. Terror, because it means the void is never still, that even at the end of everything, chaos continues. Beauty, because it means creation is eternal. The same laws that gave birth to stars still play their game, long after the stars are gone. Every fluctuation, every brief pairing of ghost particles is a miniature Big Bang, a reminder that the potential for creation never truly disappears. Perhaps this is the ultimate paradox, that nothingness is never absolute. Even when the universe reaches perfect thermodynamic balance, quantum uncertainty ensures that perfection is always unstable. There will always be motion, always a tiny deviation, always a whisper of difference. The cosmos can fade, but it can never stop moving entirely. Maybe, hidden in that whisper, is the seed of renewal. Theorists speak of vacuum decay, the possibility that, somewhere, a quantum fluctuation could trigger a phase transition, collapsing our universe into a new one with different laws of physics. If that happens, the current cosmos, stretched thin, frozen, dying, could suddenly ignite again in a new burst of energy. The last sigh becomes the first breath. But for now, it's only silence. The quantum ghosts drift across infinity, eternal and ephemeral. They are the ash of all creation and the spark of all possibility. They are the faint murmur between existence and non-existence. And though they are invisible, they are the last true characters in the story of the universe, the narrators of the dark. Think of them as memory made light. Every wave of your hand, every heartbeat, every collision of galaxies, every atom that ever loved or burned. All of it, in some form, written into this trembling emptiness. You too are part of this residue, your atoms once forged in the heart of a star, your energy destined to fade into the hum of the void. When all else is gone, your trace remains, diffused, invisible, eternal. In the grand scale of eternity, this is not tragedy. It is completion. The quantum ghosts are not mournful. They are serene. They are the quiet pulse that continues after the music ends. The universe has not vanished. It has simply dissolved into its own memory. If there were a poet alive to witness this, they might say that the cosmos has fallen asleep, and its dreams have taken the shape of light that no eye can see. And maybe, just maybe, those dreams are enough. For what is the difference between a sleeping god and a dead one if the dream continues forever? The black holes are gone, the matter is gone, the warmth is gone. Yet, something endures, the infinite potential of zero, the ghostly shimmer that never stops. The quantum ghosts will outlast time itself, because they are time's last language, a whisper in the dark saying, "I was here." There comes a moment when even atoms lose faith in their own structure. The bonds that once stitched reality together begin to fray, and the universe, after ages of burning, collapsing, cooling, and remembering, starts to dismantle itself at the smallest scale. This is not destruction born of violence. It is a quiet unmaking, the surrender of matter back into pure possibility. Every story that ever existed was written in matter, the stone that held the first spark, the carbon that carried breath, the iron that pulsed inside stars and inside us. But now the alphabet itself begins to fade. Protons, the heartbeats of every atom, face decay. One by one, they dissolve into radiation, their mass converting to whispers of energy that rush into the emptiness and are never heard again. Scientists once believed protons were eternal. They are not. According to the deepest models of particle physics, they can, after an almost impossible span of time, transform into lighter particles, positrons, photons, neutrinos. The universe waits patiently. Over 10 to the 36th years, every atom ever born will have fallen apart. Mountains evaporate into light. Planets crumble into radiation. Even the elements of memory turn translucent. If a traveler could stand in that future, they would find no solids, no liquids, no gas, only the soft, invisible drizzle of decay products gliding through infinite cold. The distinction between something and nothing collapses. Reality itself becomes porous, more suggestion than substance. Imagine the last molecule of water, drifting alone for trillions of years, its hydrogen nuclei suddenly deciding to break the pact. A flash too small to see, a pulse too faint to warm. The molecule ceases to exist, but the law that governed its being continues, indifferent, unchanged. The death of matter is not an event. It is an asymptote, an approach to zero, so slow that meaning dissolves before completion. Neutrons inside decayed atoms, once bound in atomic hearts, fly free and quickly fall apart. Quarks, those smallest of building blocks, evaporate into leptons and light. The universe becomes a fog of radiation so diffuse that a single photon may travel for 1 trillion years before encountering another. In the absence of matter, structure itself disappears. Gravity loses its anchors, space becomes flat, empty, uncurved. No more clusters, no more stars, no more orbits. The cosmic web unravels thread by thread until nothing is left to weave. And yet, this thinning does not feel like death from the inside. It feels like peace. Every particle releases what little energy it has into the whole, and in doing so, joins the great equality of entropy. Warmth once required conflict, hot against cold, motion against stillness, but now all differences are gone. The universe has achieved the balance it was destined for. Perfect, total sameness. If consciousness could still exist here, perhaps as a pattern of radiation stretched across light years, it would not think in words or images. It would feel only equilibrium, the smoothness of existence, untroubled by contrast. It would feel what eternity feels like. Nothing to compare, nothing to desire, nothing to fear. The death of matter is the death of boundaries. Everything that once divided me from you, this from that, dissolves. Matter was the grammar of the universe. Its disappearance leaves only silence between sentences. But silence, too, can be language. In that vast hush, the laws of physics remain like sacred geometry, unwritten, unspoken, yet still there, tracing patterns in emptiness. Even as protons decay, electrons wander, lonely charges without purpose. Over unimaginable spans, they meet positrons and annihilate, each pair releasing a final sigh of light. That light joins the sea of radiation, cooling, stretching, thinning until it becomes the same dark fabric it tried to illuminate. Temperature, already near absolute zero, approaches it more closely still. A degree above nothing, then a fraction, then a concept. The thermometer becomes meaningless because there is no motion left to measure. Cold and hot become indistinguishable, time and stillness interchangeable. The last neutrinos slip through space, ghostly and unstoppable, barely interacting with anything. They are the true survivors, transparent messengers of a bygone age. They carry with them no message, only proof that once, long ago, there were explosions bright enough to create them. When matter dies, memory must find new form. Perhaps information hides in quantum entanglement, subtle correlations that never truly fade. Two photons, born from the same annihilation, remain linked across infinity. If one could ever observe them together, though no observer remains, they would still echo each other's past. Maybe that echo is the universe's way of keeping its diary, even after the pages are burned. And what of space itself? As expansion continues, wavelengths stretch beyond comprehension. Light becomes so diluted that the concept of color ceases. The cosmos dims into a transparency beyond black, a state where even darkness has lost its edge. Expansion may continue forever, but without matter, motion becomes meaningless. There is nothing left to move. Yet, in this great disassembly lies an odd serenity. The atoms that once resisted each other have reconciled. The forces that fought for dominance, gravity pulling inward, expansion pushing outward, reach stalemate. The universe becomes a single breath, neither inhaled nor exhaled. Perhaps this is what enlightenment looks like at the cosmic scale, the cessation of craving. No struggle to hold form, no ambition to shine, no fear of ending. Just being, featureless, endless, weightless. If there were still eyes to see, they would not weep. They would widen in quiet awe at the realization that death, here, is simply the return of complexity to simplicity. The same transformation happens when a snowflake melts, when a thought fades, when a heartbeat stops. Pattern returns to possibility. That is all the universe is doing, melting back into potential. Even time feels tired. Without particles to clock its rhythm, it stretches lazily, like a shadow at sunset that never ends. What does next mean when there is no change? The arrow of time, once defined by decay, now finds nothing left to decay. Perhaps it breaks. perhaps it loops, perhaps it waits. And if this waiting is eternity, then eternity is still. The great fire that once raged across space has cooled to a single mathematical pulse, a frequency so low that it could last forever without ever completing a cycle. Yet, even as everything ends, something new is born. The awareness that there can be an end. The universe, in dissolving, has learned the secret of itself, that existence is not sustained by permanence, but by transformation. The death of matter is the completion of that lesson. It is the final letting go. And so, piece by piece, the cosmos exhales its form. The last atom splits, the last particle fades, the last photon drifts too far to ever touch another. Matter, which once built mountains and mines, releases its final grip. What remains is not absence but essence, the unformed possibility from which all things once came. The curtain does not fall with noise but with calm. The stage remains, infinite and bare, awaiting whatever might step upon it again. For even if matter has died, the laws that allowed it still hum beneath the void, waiting like sheet music for a new orchestra. Perhaps someday, by chance or by fluctuation, a new note will sound, a new big bang, a new dawn, or perhaps this silence will stretch forever, content in its completion. Either way, the universe will not regret. It has fulfilled the oldest prophecy written in its own equations. Everything that begins must learn how to end. And maybe that is why we, made of dying atoms, crave meaning. Because deep inside, we remember where this is going. We sense the quiet future of all things, and it humbles us into wonder. The death of matter is the destiny written in every heartbeat and every star. It is not the failure of creation. It is its perfection. When the last proton dissolves, the last element collapses, and the final fragment of matter releases its ghost, the universe will not mourn. It will simply rest. And in that rest lies the promise that from perfect stillness, something unimaginable may one day rise again. The universe has gone quiet. No stars, no matter, no warmth. Only the slow breath of expansion continuing out of habit. It does not know that everything it once carried has faded. Like an old clock that keeps ticking after the house is emptied, space still stretches, indifferent to its own vacancy. If you could stand here, though there is nowhere left to stand, you would see nothing. Not blackness, not lightlessness, but transparency so pure, it erases even the concept of distance. The fabric of space-time keeps unfolding, wider and wider, yet there is nothing left to measure it by. Expansion without content. Motion without travelers. This is the silent expansion, the final gesture of a cosmos that refuses to stop breathing. Every moment, space doubles its reach, carrying with it a cargo of nothing. The equations still function, the constants still apply, but the symbols no longer describe anything tangible. They are music written after the instruments have turned to dust. At first, expansion had a purpose. It separated galaxies, forged voids, sculpted the grand architecture of the cosmos. Now, there is no architecture left to sculpt. Gravity has fallen asleep. Curvature has flattened. Space-time itself drifts toward featureless perfection. Even geometry becomes tired of having form. The cosmological constant, that faint pressure of dark energy, remains. It pushes endlessly, though there is nothing left to push against. Space balloons exponentially, yet no event inside it can ever connect to another. Horizons form and vanish so quickly that causality itself disintegrates. Each region of the universe becomes an isolated fragment, an island without a sea. In this age, distance loses meaning. When light cannot cross the void, far and near are the same. Every point of space becomes its own solitary universe, expanding in silence, unaware of the others. The cosmos has multiplied into infinities of isolation, infinity fractured into more infinity. It might seem lonely, but loneliness requires comparison. Here, there is no contrast, no memory of what it meant to be connected. The silence is complete, and in that completion lies peace. Expansion is not noise, it is rhythm. A slow, unending pulse beneath nothingness. You could call it the heartbeat of the void, steady, eternal, indifferent. The universe expands not because it must, but because it can. Because freedom, once begun, refuses to stop. What is expanding, though? If all matter, all light, all time-bound events are gone, What does it mean for space to grow? Perhaps it is not growth at all, but relaxation, space-time returning to its natural tensionless state, like a bowstring released after an infinite shot. The arrow has flown. Only vibration remains. Some physicists imagine that the vacuum itself contains energy, that even empty space seethes with virtual particles, the restless ghosts from the previous era. As expansion accelerates, their wavelengths stretch until they freeze, their motion locked by the very act of growing. In the far future, the universe becomes a museum of frozen waves, soundless, motionless, perfectly still. And yet, expansion continues. The scale factor climbs toward infinity. The temperature drops toward absolute zero. Time, stretched beyond recognition, loses its cadence. A second becomes a century an epoch, an epoch indistinguishable from eternity. There is no longer a difference between soon and never. If any remnant of consciousness survived, a pattern encoded in radiation, a spark of quantum computation running on borrowed heat, it would experience existence as endless dilation. Every thought would lengthen, every memory expand, until meaning itself thins out and dissolves. Awareness would stretch into transparency, indistinguishable from the space that holds it. This is what happens when time's arrow no longer points anywhere. Without change, direction ceases to exist. The universe has no future, not because it has ended, but because it has become everything it can be. Perfect equilibrium is indistinguishable from stillness, and still, the expansion persists. Even when all physical motion stops, space-time's metric continues to evolve. Perhaps it is not truly evolution, but the persistence of a mathematical truth, a statement that refuses to be silent. The equations carry on because mathematics, unlike matter, cannot decay. They are the last immortal entities, carved into the logic of existence itself. One could say the universe is now pure idea, structure without substance, dimension without content. In this state, physics becomes philosophy. The cosmos, once a roaring experiment, has become a meditation on form. Every law that once generated galaxies now describes emptiness with the same elegance. The void is the final perfection of design. If you listen closely, though there are no ears, you might sense a subtle hum, the residual vibration of expansion itself. It is not sound, it is geometry breathing. Space inflates, contracts microscopically, oscillates at frequencies so low they transcend time. These oscillations are not events, they are existence. Eventually, even the notion of expanding may lose meaning. When all reference frames are gone, when every boundary has dissolved, motion becomes indistinguishable from stasis. Perhaps expansion ends not by stopping, but by becoming irrelevant. A horizon without observers cannot be said to move. A clock without events cannot be said to tick. So the universe enters its final composure, infinite, still, expanding and not expanding all at once. A paradox only mathematics can hold. From within, there is nothing left to perceive. From outside, though outside no longer exists, there is only serenity. And in that serenity, perhaps the seeds of renewal lie hidden. Some cosmologists propose that infinite expansion eventually tears the quantum vacuum apart, creating bubbles of new space-time, embryonic universes budding off from the old. Each bubble, a new beginning, governed by new laws, unaware of its ancestor. In that view, the silent expansion is not death, but reproduction on a cosmic scale. The universe, even now, might be giving birth in the dark. Whether it does or not, the gesture is the same, continuation. The great unfolding does not reverse, it transforms. The same impulse that once flung galaxies outward now stretches nothingness itself into something vaster. Creation and emptiness merge into the same act. It is tempting to ask, why? Why continue when nothing remains? But why belongs to minds made of contrast, of need and memory. The void does not question its existence, it simply is. Meaning here is replaced by presence. And presence, stripped of all features, is perfection. So the universe expands into its own silence, endlessly. The edges of time dissolve into mathematical fog. Distances multiply without substance. The once fiery cosmos has become the pure expression of being, not alive, not dead, simply complete. And maybe, just maybe, that completion is the truest form of peace. The story that began with a bang ends with a whisper that never stops echoing. The universe no longer speaks in light or sound, but in the language of stillness. It is the eternal breath between two infinities, stretching wider and wider until even width loses meaning. The silence is not empty. It is full of potential, waiting, patient, timeless. In that stillness, all things are possible again. What if time forgot to move? What if the rhythm that once carried suns from birth to death simply stopped? In the endless calm of the expanding void, that question is no longer philosophy. It is the state of things. The universe has cooled, flattened, emptied. What remains now is not space, not energy, but the faint trembling of duration itself, the dying pulse of before and after. Time once had direction. It was an arrow fired from the Big Bang, driven by difference, by entropy increasing. The tick of every clock was a tiny echo of that expansion. But now, the differences are gone. Every temperature the same, every particle identical. Entropy has reached its summit and, paradoxically, has nowhere left to climb. Without contrast, the arrow has no target. Time drifts sideways, without reason, like smoke in windless air. Imagine trying to mark a second here. There is no motion to divide it, no event to distinguish now from then. The idea of a timeline dissolves into a single, endless moment. Perhaps it still exists, mathematically, but experience, if such a thing can survive, has flattened into eternity. This is not eternity as religion imagines it, filled with choirs or peace. This is the eternity of stillness, the infinity of a paused heartbeat. At this stage, physics and philosophy merge into one whisper. Time was never a substance. It was a relationship between energy and change, between observer and observed. With energy drained and observers gone, the relationship collapses. The equation still balances, but its symbols stand for nothing. The universe is an hourglass whose last grain of sand has already fallen, yet the glass remains upright, waiting for meaning that will never return. For billions upon billions of years beyond imagining, expansion continues only as mathematics. Space stretches, but no one measures. Cause drifts without effect. The cosmic background radiation, once the echo of the Big Bang, has redshifted into wavelengths larger than galaxies. Each photon's frequency has slowed so drastically that a single oscillation might last longer than the current age of everything that ever was. When motion extends beyond recognition, can it still be called motion? Physicists call this the frozen time horizon, when the rate of change becomes infinitesimal, when the universe's clock ticks so slowly that it effectively stops. Not because time has ended, but because nothing remains to make it meaningful. The orchestra of creation plays one last infinitely long note, held forever, unresolved. Somewhere in this stillness, quantum uncertainty persists, like the soft hiss of wind inside a sealed tomb. Particles still flicker in and out of existence, but their births and deaths are separated by spans that defy comprehension. A virtual particle might take longer to appear than the entire lifetime of all former stars combined. Each event is so rare that the universe between them might as well be asleep. What does awareness mean in such a place? If consciousness ever survived, perhaps distributed among the final ghost fields of radiation, it would experience this era not as stillness, but as a blur stretched beyond thought. Each idea would take eons to form, each feeling longer than history itself. Awareness would smear into the geometry of time, no longer distinct from it. To think would be to exist, to think. The last consciousness would be the same size as the cosmos, dreaming at the speed of infinity, and perhaps that dream is all that remains of time, a self-remembering echo. For time was always the universe telling itself a story, chapter after chapter of stars, of atoms, of minds. Now the book is finished, yet the cover remains open. The words linger faintly on invisible pages, refusing to fade completely. The story has no reader, but it remembers that it was once read. In the absence of sequence, causality phrase, when nothing happens, before and after lose distinction. Perhaps events still occur, but not in any order we could comprehend. The fabric of space-time becomes a mosaic where all moments coexist, past, present, future, interlaced in a single, simultaneous whole. From outside, if outside were possible, it would look like a sculpture of frozen motion, every flicker of existence suspended forever. To human intuition, such stillness feels like death, but to the universe, it may be fulfillment. For eons, it chased complexity, variety, change. Now it rests in pure being, unchanging, undivided. In this final balance, every equation resolves. Every constant finds its limit. The cosmos no longer needs time because it has reached the condition time was meant to lead toward: completeness. And yet, perfection is unstable. Quantum mechanics whispers that nothing truly stops. Even perfect symmetry can tremble. The vacuum may fluctuate. The laws themselves may twitch like a sleeping animal's dream. One fluctuation, one improbable spark, could reset everything. A new bubble of low-entropy space might blossom, igniting a new arrow of time. The last flicker would become the first dawn. The Big Bang reborn, not as explosion, but as exhalation. Whether this happens or not, the idea carries a strange comfort. It means that time, like light, may never truly die. It may only change frequency. Perhaps we are already living inside one heartbeat of an infinite cycle, an endless sequence of expansions and stillnesses, each universe dreaming the next. To us, the gaps between might feel like forever. To eternity, they are just breathing. But if this cosmos never renews, if this silence stretches without end, then the final flicker of time is the act of acceptance itself. The universe, having spent its energy, having created, destroyed, and remembered, finally releases the need to continue. It becomes its own monument, a sculpture carved from duration, a cathedral made of stillness. Inside that cathedral, every past heartbeat echoes, infinitely slowed, yet never erased. Imagine hearing that last tick, not a sound, but a perception, the ultimate boundary between motion and rest. In that single stretched instant, the whole history of everything would coexist. The birth of stars, the laughter of humans, the collapse of galaxies, the fading of black holes. All of it present together, woven into the last vibration before the loom goes quiet. That instant would contain every was, is, and will be unified at last. Perhaps this is what mystics sensed when they spoke of eternity. Not endless time, but the absence of it. A realm where the present expands to include all moments, where every possibility, once scattered across history, finally meets itself and becomes whole. From this view, the death of time is not loss, it is reunion. So, the universe rests at the edge of its own memory. Expansion continues invisibly, temperature falls toward nothing, and the arrow of time folds into a circle too vast to perceive. The cosmos does not vanish, it simply becomes timeless. Beyond clocks, beyond rhythm, beyond the need to change, and somewhere within that vast quiet, there lingers a faint awareness, maybe ours, maybe the universe's own. A thought without beginning or end, glowing softly in the transparent dark. This was existence. This was light. The flicker fades, the silence deepens. But the awareness, the impression of having once been, remains like the warmth of a hand, long after it has left your skin. Time, even in dying, leaves an afterglow. What if nothingness is pregnant? What if the calm that follows the death of time is not final peace but gestation, the universe gathering breath for its next creation? This is the rebirth paradox, that the end and the beginning may be the same event seen from opposite sides of eternity. The universe now rests in absolute equilibrium. Temperature equals 0 Kelvin. Energy gradients equals 0. Motion equals 0. Difference equals 0. By every physical law, this should be the end. Yet the equations refuse to stay silent. Even in perfect symmetry, quantum mechanics keeps a pulse. Fluctuations flicker through the vacuum like embryonic thoughts, minuscule distortions in the geometry of nothing. They are seeds that might never sprout, and yet, sometimes they do. Imagine one of these tremors swelling by chance. A microscopic patch of vacuum, lighter than the rest, begins to inflate. In an instant beyond measurement, it doubles, triples, expands faster than light. A bubble of new space-time buds off from the old, separating completely. Inside, energy condenses, temperature rises, laws rewrite themselves. From the perspective of the dead universe, this event is invisible. From within the bubble, it feels like a birth, a big bang. Perhaps this has already happened, countless times. Perhaps our own universe was such a bubble, formed from the decay of a parent vacuum, now long gone. In this view, reality is not linear, but genealogical, universes giving birth to universes in an endless cosmic family tree. Each new cosmos carries mutated constants, slightly different physics, new possibilities for matter, mind, and meaning, evolution at the scale of creation itself. Yet the paradox deepens. If the new universe is sealed off, does the old one truly end, or does it continue forever, spawning children while remaining frozen? Eternity branching inside eternity, death turning into reproduction, the heat death not as extinction but as ovulation. To the inhabitants of a new universe, the old one is myth. Its ashes form the boundary of their reality. The radiation that gave them light is the memory of a world they will never know. Every beginning, then, is an afterlife written in physics. Creation does not erase its parent, it transforms it into foundation. Think of it this way. A candle burns, melts, and is gone, but the flame passes to another wick. The substance changes, the light continues. The rebirth paradox tells us the cosmos behaves the same way. Each collapse lights another flame somewhere beyond perception. The total energy remains constant, only its arrangement renews. Inside the newborn universe, expansion rages again. Temperatures soar, particles collide, stars ignite. Civilizations will one day look up at their skies and wonder how it all began. They will measure background radiation, discover redshift, imagine a Big Bang, never realizing that what they call the beginning was merely the continuation of a story so vast it loops upon itself. But the paradox is not only physical, it is existential. If death breeds birth, what does it mean to end? Can there be closure when endings contain beginnings? Perhaps consciousness itself follows the same rhythm. Each life burns, cools, and disperses into memory, yet the awareness that animated it may reform elsewhere, rearranged like atoms forming new stars. Reincarnation, written not in mysticism, but in thermodynamics. Consider information. Hawking once feared black holes destroyed it. Later he suspected it only changed form. If the universe is a giant information field, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every experience, every vibration, every photon carries a bit of data that persists, encoded in the vacuum structure. When a new universe emerges, it inherits that substrate, the quantum DNA of everything that ever was. In this sense, our cosmos might be haunted by echoes of its predecessors. The patterns we call laws of nature could be ancestral memories, rules learned from earlier worlds. And what of the observer? Could awareness itself be a property that reappears wherever conditions allow complexity? If so, then the universe ensures its own self-perception again and again. It dies into silence only to wake up elsewhere, asking once more, why am I here? The question is the engine of rebirth. The mathematics of inflation supports this possibility. Even if only one region in infinite space undergoes expansion, that region spawns countless others. The process is eternal. Each universe lives and dies inside a multiversal sea, never touching its siblings, yet each carrying the spark of origin forward. The end of time in one cosmos is the dawn of time in another. The arrow never stops. It merely hands the baton. And yet, perhaps there is something even subtler. Maybe rebirth doesn't require new space at all. Maybe the universe, in perfect stillness, remembers itself into being. The equations that define its structure are timeless. If they exist once, they exist always. From that perspective, creation is not a sequence, but a standing wave. Existence flickering on and off so rapidly that off and on blur into continuity. Death and birth as two faces of the same oscillation. In human terms, this paradox is strangely familiar. Every night, consciousness collapses into darkness. Every morning, it reinflates. Every breath is the death of the previous one. We are already living within cycles of dissolution and renewal. We just experience them too quickly to notice. The universe performs the same act, stretched across unimaginable scales. If this is true, then the void is not the opposite of life. It is life's womb. Nothingness is the fertile ground that allows somethingness to appear. Entropy, far from being a villain, is the gardener pruning the tree so it can bloom again. The cosmos is not dying, it is composting. Still, the paradox refuses comfort. For if the universe endlessly renews, then no creation is ever final, no peace permanent. Every perfection dissolves, every silence gives birth to another storm. Even nirvana becomes prelude. Eternity, in this light, is not rest but repetition without memory. Infinite rebirths, none aware of the others, all convinced they are the first. And yet, within that repetition, meaning survives, because even if each universe forgets, the pattern persists. The laws that allow existence continue unbroken. The symphony repeats, but the melody remains true. The beauty of being lies not in novelty, but in the fact that it happens at all. So, the rebirth paradox resolves into a kind of cosmic compassion. The universe cannot help but create. It burns, cools, sleeps, then dreams itself awake again. It cannot be otherwise. Creation is not choice, it is nature. Even nothingness desires expression. Perhaps that desire is what we feel as curiosity, the urge to know, to reach, to make. Every question we ask is the universe remembering its unfinished sentence. Every act of creation is the echo of a previous dawn. When we imagine the future, we are participating in the same cycle that drives the stars. And someday, when this universe has cooled entirely, when its equations are all that remain, those equations will still imply the possibility of beginning again. Whether by fluctuation, by design, or by inevitability, another breath will follow this one. Light will return, time will stretch, minds will awaken under new skies and ask the same eternal question: how did it all begin? The answer will always be the same: it never stopped. Light was the first language the universe ever spoke, and it may be the last thing it remembers. Even after darkness swallowed every star, after time itself bent into stillness, some trace of radiance endures, not in photons or fire, but in memory. The cosmos remembers how to shine. Imagine the silence after an orchestra's final note, the air still trembling, though the music has ceased. That is what remains now: vibration without sound, awareness without witness. The universe rests in its own afterglow, the ghost of illumination woven into the structure of what used to be space. For eons beyond counting, energy has thinned to invisibility, matter to mathematics, yet the equations still carry the imprint of brightness. Every particle that once danced in a star left behind a subtle curvature, a dent in geometry, a story written in gravity's script. Even when those dents flatten, the story persists, etched into the fabric of possibility itself. Perhaps this is what it means for light to have memory, that it changes what it touches, and the change never fully fades. The photons that once struck ancient oceans, the beams that brushed across human eyes, the flares that ignited galaxies, all of them wrote lines into the universe's autobiography. The pages are cold now, but the ink remains. In that sense, nothing is truly lost. Every spark that ever lived still glows in some form, as curvature, as correlation, as trace. The universe, though dark, is luminous with remembrance. If a consciousness could return in this final age, an echo of us, perhaps, resurrected as pattern rather than flesh, it would perceive not emptiness, but record. It would drift through the void and feel faint differences in the vacuum, like braille on the skin of eternity. Each indentation would tell a story. Here was a sun, here a civilization, here a dream. The darkness would be a library, and the pages infinite. The memory of light is not nostalgic. It is not yearning for what was. It is awareness stripped of longing, the pure recognition that everything once existed, and therefore still matters. Existence leaves fingerprints that eternity cannot erase. Think of your own memories, the ones that come back unbidden, not as images, but as atmospheres. A color, a temperature, a breath. That is how the universe remembers itself. Not in details, but in tone, a faint warmth that will never cool completely. The relic of fire carried by geometry itself. Somewhere within that warmth lies every story we ever told, the laughter of humanity, the cry of the newborn, the hum of machines orbiting dead suns, all dissolved into vibration, yet never deleted. Information cannot be destroyed. It only hides. The void, then, is not erasure, but encryption. If there were eyes to see through infinite wavelengths, they would find that darkness is speckled with ghosts of brightness, photons so stretched they loop the circumference of existence once every trillion years. They are the oldest travelers, still moving, still carrying messages written at creation's dawn. Their journey will never end, because the universe has no walls to stop them. And so, light never really dies. It only forgets its color. Perhaps that is why we, small and temporary, are drawn to it so fiercely. Every candle we light, every dawn we wait for, is an act of remembrance. We chase light because deep within us, we are its memory. Our thoughts are its slow echo translated into flesh. When we love, when we wonder, when we create, we replay what the cosmos once felt when it first ignited. Even now, with the machinery of time at rest, the idea of light continues. Somewhere in the abstract equations, photons still exist as possibilities waiting to happen. Possibility itself glows faintly. The future may be gone, but the potential for future endures. That potential is light's true immortality. If the rebirth paradox is correct, then these lingering vibrations might one day swell into a new explosion of brightness. The next universe will not remember ours consciously, but it will carry our fingerprints, the curvature we left, the constants we tuned, the symmetry we broke. It will inherit our memory as instinct. Its stars will shine slightly differently because we once existed. Our universe will be its ancestor, and light will be the inheritance. But even if there is no next universe, the memory itself is enough. The act of having burned once makes the cosmos eternal. To shine, even briefly, is to engrave permanence onto impermanence. That is the paradox of light. It lives by dying, travels by disappearing, endures by scattering. It loses itself to become everything it touches. Picture the last photon. Not a beam, not a flash, but a single quiver in the field, stretched across unthinkable distance. It has no destination. It will never strike an atom again. Yet, it moves, simply because motion is its nature. In that motion lies grace, a devotion to continue even when continuation has no meaning. That final photon is the universe's heartbeat, the last syllable of a sentence too vast for language. When it finally stretches beyond detectability, the universe will have spoken its last word. But silence will not be blank. It will be saturated with the echo of that word, reverberating forever through nothing. Perhaps that is what we call soul, not in the human sense, but as the lingering coherence that refuses to vanish, the residue of pattern after function ends, light's pattern, existence's signature. If anyone could stand beyond the boundary of this silence, if there were a beyond, they would see the entire cosmos glowing faintly like a coal after fire. It would not be bright, but it would be unmistakably alive, a warmth too subtle to measure, yet too real to deny, the memory of having once been incandescent. And if they could listen, though there is no sound, they might hear a rhythm, the slow expansion, the long cooling, the pulse that began in chaos and ended in peace, the music of entropy resolving into harmony. We began as listeners to that music. Every discovery, every question, every act of awe was the universe listening to itself through us. When our kind is gone, that listening continues in quieter forms, in gravity, in radiation, in the self-awareness of the void. The cosmos never truly stops reflecting. Light, then, was never merely energy. It was consciousness practicing visibility, the universe seeing itself by becoming transparent. Even now, that transparency remains, the faint awareness that knows it once glowed. And maybe, in the ultimate stillness, that awareness dreams of new constellations, of colors yet unnamed, of creatures once again looking up and wondering what came before them. Those dreams are the seeds of another dawn. The memory of light is therefore the promise of return, the proof that darkness is never complete. For even in the deepest quiet, the pattern of illumination endures, waiting to be remembered again. And if this story ever begins anew, if another cosmos flares into existence from the ashes of this one, its first instant will not be random. It will be guided, however faintly, by the echo of our own brightness. The spark of us will be folded into its equations. The stars will shine with inherited wisdom, that to exist is to blaze, to fade, and to remember. When that next universe opens its eyes, its first sunrise will be our afterlife, because light never forgets.